It was a night that shimmered with elegance and quiet anticipation. The grand hall was filled with people dressed in sparkling gowns and crisp suits, their conversations weaving a soft hum of excitement. Crystal chandeliers hung from the high ceilings, casting warm, golden light across the room. At the center of it all, the woman confident, poised, and unmistakably passionate about music stood beside a polished black piano. Her eyes were bright with determination, and there was an energy about her that drew the attention of everyone in the room. She looked around the hall, scanning the crowd with a mixture of challenge and amusement. Her voice, calm yet carrying an unmistakable firmness, cut through the chatter. "Play this and I'll marry you," she declared. The words hung in the air like a bold statement, shocking some, exciting others, and leaving most utterly curious. There was a pause, a moment where everyone in the room let the words settle, trying to process what they had just heard. From across the hall, the billionaire, a man whose life was defined by wealth, influence, and a certain arrogance, let out a loud, mocking laugh. His presence alone commanded attention. People glanced his way, sensing the mix of amusement and disbelief in his expression. He didn't even try to hide his mockery. To him, the challenge was a joke, something meant to entertain rather than reveal any real skill. He leaned back slightly, the corners of his mouth curling in a smirk, ready to dismiss the situation entirely, but in the shadows near the back of the hall, someone else was watching. A janitor, a man often overlooked in such grand settings, stood quietly, broom in hand, but with an intensity in his eyes that betrayed his inner world. He wasn't rich, he wasn't powerful, and he certainly didn't have a flashy lifestyle. Yet his heart had always been filled with music. He had spent countless nights alone, practicing on old, worn pianos, dreaming of playing in front of an audience that would truly understand the music. Tonight, as the words echoed across the hall, something stirred within him, a spark of courage he didn't know he had. The guests, still murmuring among themselves, couldn't stop staring at the scene unfolding. Some whispered in disbelief, wondering if anyone could truly rise to the challenge. Others chuckled quietly, certain that the billionaire's laughter would never be replaced with awe. The tension in the room grew, subtle but palpable, as all eyes slowly turned toward the piano. The janitor's heart raced. He felt a mix of fear, excitement, and anticipation. For years he had dreamed of this very moment, though never quite imagining it in such a luxurious, intimidating setting. He swallowed hard, took a deep breath, and allowed himself a small moment of doubt. Who am I to try this? They will laugh at me, just like him, he thought. But then, almost instinctively, his gaze drifted back to the woman who was now watching him expectantly. There was something in her look, a quiet encouragement, a subtle nod that seemed to say, "You can do this." That simple gesture was all the encouragement he needed. He stepped forward, feeling the polished wood of the piano beneath his hands. The room seemed to hold its breath. Even the billionaire's smirk faltered slightly, replaced with an expression of curiosity. The audience, sensing the shift, fell into an uneasy silence. This was no longer just a challenge. It was a moment pregnant with possibility. The janitor placed his fingers gently on the keys, feeling their smooth surface, familiar yet still intimidating. The first notes escaped cautiously, soft and hesitant. There was a brief moment when he faltered, a tiny slip that made him pause, just enough for a collective gasp to ripple through the audience. But then, as if a switch had been flipped, he found his rhythm, his confidence growing with every note. The music flowed from him not as a performance meant to impress, but as a language of the soul, raw and genuine. People in the audience began to lean forward, drawn in by the beauty and precision of his playing. The billionaire's laughter faded completely, replaced by an almost involuntary tilt of the head, a silent acknowledgement that perhaps this was more than just a simple attempt. The janitor's hands moved with fluid grace, each note carrying emotion that transcended words. It was as if he was telling a story through the piano, his story, his dreams. And his courage right there in front of them all. The woman's eyes widened slightly. Her challenge now mingled with genuine surprise and admiration. She had expected skill, perhaps even talent, but what she saw was something much deeper. It wasn't just technical ability. It was heart, courage, and an unspoken truth that often goes unnoticed, that brilliance can exist in the most unexpected places. The billionaire leaned forward subtly, his arrogance replaced with intrigue. He had never encountered such a display before. The laughter that had once echoed through the hall was gone, replaced with a quiet tension that held the entire room captive. Every chord, every subtle shift in tempo seemed to command attention, and people began to notice not just the skill, but the soul behind the music. As the janitor continued, his confidence solidified. He no longer felt like the humble figure who had merely stumbled into a room of wealth and power. Instead, he became a force in his own right, a storyteller with his instrument as his voice. The audience's expressions shifted from doubt to wonder. Whispers turned into quiet murmurs of amazement. The room, which had initially been filled with mockery and amusement, now resonated with awe and appreciation. It was in these moments, subtle yet profound, that the janitor realized something important. This was never truly about winning a challenge or seeking approval. It was about embracing his gift, about standing in his truth, and allowing his passion to shine even when the world doubted him. Every note he played carried that message, and slowly the atmosphere of the hall transformed. The billionaire, the woman, and even the audience could feel it. They were witnessing something rare, something authentic. The tension continued to build, reaching a point where even the faintest sound could draw gasps. The janitor's fingers moved faster, but never carelessly, weaving through the melody with precision and emotion. There were moments of complexity, moments of soft tenderness, and moments that demanded attention with dramatic intensity. Each movement told a story, a testament to countless hours of practice, dedication, and unwavering love for the music. Finally, as he approached the last section of the piece, the room seemed to hold its breath collectively. The janitor's movements became almost poetic, each note landing perfectly, resonating with clarity and emotion. The audience, now fully captivated, leaned forward in unison. The woman's eyes shimmered with admiration, and even the billionaire's expression softened, showing respect that had once seemed impossible. And then, with the final note, the music hung in the air, long and clear, vibrating in the hearts of everyone present. Silence followed, brief but heavy, before the room erupted in applause. The sound was thunderous, spontaneous, and heartfelt. People stood, clapping and cheering, some wiping tears from their eyes. The janitor, though humble and slightly overwhelmed, felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had stepped into the light, and for the first time, the world saw him not just as a janitor, but as a musician, an artist, and a courageous human being who dared to believe in himself. The billionaire, still seated, slowly stood and approached him. There was no arrogance in his movements now, only respect and a hint of astonishment. The woman smiled warmly, proud of her intuition and the courage she had inspired. In that moment, the hall was no longer a space of hierarchy or pretense. It was a space where talent, courage, and authenticity reigned supreme. The janitor bowed slightly, acknowledging the applause and the astonishment around him. But inwardly, he knew this was just the beginning. The challenge had been met, yes, but more importantly, he had discovered the power of stepping forward, trusting his ability, and letting his passion speak louder than doubt or ridicule. As people continued to talk and cheer, the janitor returned to his place quietly, a gentle smile on his face. He didn't need extravagant praise or public acknowledgement. What mattered was that he had faced the moment and shone. The woman approached him, her eyes reflecting respect and admiration, and whispered words that were both sincere and full of warmth. The billionaire, still processing, simply nodded in acknowledgement, a silent gesture that spoke volumes. That night, as the hall slowly emptied and the lights dimmed, one thing was clear: life had a way of surprising those who dared to take a step forward. The janitor's journey was far from over, but this night would be remembered not for wealth, status, or power, but for courage, talent, and the human spirit triumphing against expectation. And with that, part one of this extraordinary story came to a close, leaving the audience, the billionaire, the woman, and the janitor himself with a sense of wonder, anticipation, and the undeniable feeling that the next chapter would be even more remarkable. The applause still echoed in the grand hall as the janitor slowly lowered his hands from the piano. The notes of his last chord lingered in the air, a soft resonance that seemed to carry not only music but the weight of courage, hope, and quiet triumph. The audience was still caught in the magic of the moment, unable to speak, blink, or even breathe properly for a heartbeat. The room was alive with astonishment, and yet in that silence, a deeper realization spread quietly among those present. They had just witnessed something extraordinary. The woman who had issued the challenge stepped closer, her eyes shimmering with admiration. She had believed in talent, yes, but not in the overwhelming way she was experiencing now. This was beyond skill, beyond technical mastery. It was a human story told through sound. The janitor had not just played the piano. He had spoken to every soul in that room without uttering a single word. The richness of emotion in every note, the subtle crescendos, the soft, almost whispered tones, they all conveyed a journey of struggle, hope, and courage. The billionaire, who had laughed at the challenge mere moments ago, stood frozen in place. His usual confident smirk had disappeared, replaced with a rare look of pure astonishment. He had never encountered anyone capable of such brilliance, and certainly not someone he had considered beneath notice. The realization struck him in an almost physical way. He had underestimated not just the janitor, but the very essence of human potential. He had been confronted with a raw truth that money, power, and status could never buy authentic talent and heart. People in the audience, who had initially been skeptical or even amused, were now fully engaged, some standing in awe, others whispering to their neighbors, barely able to articulate their shock. A few had tears forming in their eyes, not only because of the music, but because they recognized a rare, almost sacred courage in the janitor's performance. It was a reminder that greatness could come from the humblest beginnings, that the world often overlooked the quiet, patient dreamers who kept their fire alive in the shadows. The janitor, still seated at the piano, felt a surge of warmth and relief. He had feared failure, the ridicule, the laughter, but none of it had come. Instead, he was met with admiration, respect, and an emotional intensity that almost made him tremble. He had stepped out of the background of life into a moment that would forever change how people saw him, and perhaps how he saw himself. This was not about fame or recognition. It was about claiming a space where his voice could be heard, where his effort, perseverance, and passion could finally shine. The woman, still standing nearby, took a cautious step forward. Her initial challenge had been playful, even teasing, yet she now realized the magnitude of what had occurred. She smiled, a mixture of pride, surprise, and genuine joy, and said softly, "I never imagined that you could do this." Her words were sincere, untainted by condescension or expectation. It was the kind of recognition that carries weight, the kind that validates both talent and courage. The janitor nodded humbly, offering a quiet smile in return, not out of arrogance but of understanding. They both knew this was a shared moment, a testament to the unpredictability of life. Meanwhile, the billionaire had taken a hesitant step toward the piano. Each movement was careful, deliberate, as if he were approaching something fragile and priceless. When he reached the janitor, he extended his hand not in mockery or jest, but in genuine respect. "I have to admit," he said, his voice low, almost uncharacteristically sincere, "I didn't expect this." "You've earned my respect." The janitor looked at him, feeling an unfamiliar but welcome warmth of acknowledgement. For the first time, the billionaire's presence didn't feel intimidating. Instead, it was another human recognizing another human. Stripped of pretension, status, or ego, the audience, sensing the shift in tone, erupted once more in applause, but this time it was different. It wasn't just excitement, it was celebration, recognition of a triumph that went beyond skill. It was the victory of courage, of persistence, and of human dignity. People clapped not only for the performance, but for the journey that had led to it. The janitor had transformed the night into a story of hope, reminding everyone present that sometimes the most remarkable achievements come from those we least expect. As the hall gradually began to settle, conversations started anew, but they were now filled with admiration rather than skepticism. Guests discussed the performance in hushed, reverent tones, sharing impressions of the emotion, precision, and soulfulness of the music. Some expressed disbelief that such talent could come from someone whose life had been largely unseen and uncelebrated. Others reflected on their own assumptions, silently questioning the way they had judged the janitor moments before. It was as if the entire hall had collectively learned something profound about humility, talent, and courage. The janitor finally rose from the piano bench. He felt the weight of the moment on his shoulders, but it was not a burden. It was a quiet, joyful responsibility. His hands, slightly trembling, still carried the memory of the music he had just played. The woman approached him once again, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "You didn't just play the piano," she said, her voice sincere and warm. "You told a story, and you touched every person in this room." The janitor's chest swelled with pride. Not from arrogance, but from the deep satisfaction of having shared his heart. The billionaire, who had remained nearby, finally allowed a small, appreciative smile to form. "I have never underestimated anyone again," he admitted, and the statement carried weight. It was more than a comment on talent. It was an acknowledgement of the janitor's courage to step forward, to face an intimidating challenge, and to excel against all expectations. In that moment, the dynamics of the room shifted. The usual hierarchies, the assumptions about power and status, no longer mattered. What mattered was courage, talent, and authenticity, the qualities that the janitor had embodied in every note he played. From the shadows, the janitor's colleagues and friends began to approach, their eyes wide with admiration and disbelief. They had always known him as a quiet, diligent worker, someone who moved through life with humility and patience. But now they saw him in a new light, as a hero of his own story, someone who had dared to dream, take a risk, and succeed in a world that often ignored the quiet talents of ordinary people. There were congratulations, handshakes, and even tears of pride, as those who knew his journey best could finally witness the fruits of years of dedication. The janitor, standing amidst the applause and attention, felt a mixture of humility and joy. He didn't seek recognition, yet it was undeniably gratifying. He had not only played a beautiful piece of music, but had also inspired those who witnessed it. In doing so, he reminded everyone that true talent is often hidden, waiting for the right moment to shine. He had also reminded them that courage, the willingness to step forward despite fear and doubt, could open doors to opportunities that seemed impossible. As the evening continued, the janitor was invited to play for more guests, and his story spread quickly through the crowd. People were talking not just about the music, but about the message it carried, that no matter how humble one's beginnings, greatness can emerge when determination meets opportunity. The night became more than a simple event. It became a testament to human potential, a celebration of courage, and an unforgettable lesson in humility and respect. By the time the last guests departed and the grand hall began to empty, the janitor knew that his life had changed forever. Opportunities would come, recognition would follow, and his talent would no longer remain in the shadows. Yet, even with all this, he remained grounded. He understood that true fulfillment came not from applause or accolades, but from living authentically, embracing one's passions, and daring to step forward even when the odds seemed insurmountable. As he walked through the empty hall one last time, the piano's polished surface glimmering under the fading light, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. It had not been an easy road. There had been moments of doubt, long nights of practice, and times when the world seemed indifferent to his dreams. But tonight had proven that perseverance, combined with courage and heart, could move mountains or, in this case, hearts. The janitor smiled softly, knowing that he had not only played a song, but had changed lives, starting with his own. And so, the story concluded not with grandeur or spectacle, but with the quiet, profound truth that talent, courage, and authenticity can shine through any barrier. The billionaire had learned humility, the woman had witnessed bravery, and the janitor had realized that his potential was limitless. The applause may have faded, the lights may have dimmed, and the guests may have gone their separate ways. But the impact of that night would linger, an enduring reminder that greatness can arise from the most unexpected places when someone dares to believe in themselves. Life, after all, is full of surprises, and sometimes the most remarkable moments come not from wealth, status, or privilege, but from the quiet courage of someone willing to step into the light, play their heart, and show the world the genius that has always been there.